What school do you girls go to?
I go to J.P. Bolin. I go to Archbishop O'Leary.
And do you have COM this class in Archbishop O'Leary?
Not yet. I haven't put it in my schedule yet because I have a few other things I need to take first.
Okay. Good. Yeah, we go to Archbishop O'Leary. We do a presentation, and we used to go to J.J. Bowman. I need to get in there again. Just knocking down the doors. You want to? Such an interesting topic to talk about. Not.
Your name again?
Allison. Allison.
Hello. Hello.
How are you? You know what works?
Yeah.
I don't know if I need it on.
No, no,
I don't think I need it on. I got a big enough voice.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm shouting.
No. No,
I don't know if we need it for the live stream.
Camera, yeah. I don't know whether. Father will know. He's a techie. Yeah. Hi. Yeah, Father reminded me texting me, so I come.
Actually, I had a doctor's appointment.
Good. I'll talk to Father.
two roles, I found people coming who are connecting with family.
Yeah. Today's one I believe is not.
Yeah, so
Except one, I think.
no, that was another story. Huh? And I didn't have any patience. So even resume and doing, how can I face them?
They don't, one who speaks Arabic, right? If somebody would, how did they get PR?
No, they came on resume.
All of them?
Yeah, but the thing is, I'm not telling that that's what agencies are supposed to be done. See, and I'm not being rude, but when we are taking away the work of agency, you getting what I mean? Because agencies like Mennonite Center, they are government funded, they're supposed to do that. We shouldn't be doing that.
No. Because Mennonite Center, they have English program. Even
And if they can't speak English, then go for that program to get that English.
maybe actually they do not know the
No, Amy knows all this.
She knows?
Yes. Because when I came today, I said, and I'm not being rude, but we might as well use our time bringing our community together. We need that.
Yeah, not refugees.
Refugees is fine, but we can refer them to agencies like this.
Yes.
Let them, because that's government funded, government is making this program. But we need our community to continue.
I'm not being rude also. This is church I'm talking. Because I'm in churches and it's in the project. So we had two hampers, large, big two in a two tray. You know that.
Yeah.
Shirley was telling me that after evaluating these ladies who want food, if they want food, I can fill them with the St. Vincent de Paul instead of taking it from the box.
And that's what I think we need to sit down.
And you know what, Ron? I saw bread on the floor. Bread on the floor. I came to Father to, I want to bless them. I said, bread. I said, Father, what's this? You know, the cake tray, do all on the floor. So they must have gone through like a rampage.
And I think we just have to sit with Father and say, we need to focus on our community, bringing youth to, and that's my focus. I want to bring youth to the church. What can youth do to our church? Because we're missing the youth.
We can do this all the time.
Because our youth is turning away from church. That's what we come in to bring the youth together, to bring them back to church.
That we should have a social gathering tonight.
That's the main thing.
You know that?
I'm more interested in that.
My idea of social gathering is very good. The church community.
Yes, and also when we have youth gathering, youth will look at each other youth and will be like a role model.
And you know, these people will come. I think they will come back. It's just a one time.
So we use that with you.
I need to put the microphone on if we just, with this small crowd.
Yes, because for the
You'll
live
need it
stream,
for
you
that,
need it.
okay, I thought, okay.
We still like to hear you on the speaker with you.
Was that wrong? You need to get a microphone.
Yeah, when you want me to speak, definitely the microphone should be off. So Susan, this is what my idea is. I think we have to set the Father and set the goal. Like this is what we want.
All right, good evening everyone, and thank you for coming. The few of us that are here, I really appreciate you coming out tonight for this excellent presentation. For those that are watching the live stream at home, sorry for the delay in getting started tonight, but We're going to proceed with our presentation now, and I would love to introduce to everyone Allison Zlasky from the Pregnancy Care Center. She's going to be our presenter this evening, and on behalf of everybody from our parish, I'd really like to thank you for being here, and please give us what you got. Thank you, Allison.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm delighted to be here. The scene's really loud, but I will try to monitor it. It sounds okay to you? Great. So we want to welcome those who are watching online. I'm from the Pregnancy Care Center. I am the community educator, I'm the director. I've actually been in that position for over 10 years. And so basically design programs, and we go into schools, junior high and high schools, talking on healthy relationships and promoting abstinence and what that looks like, talking about media and technology influences, but really the whole focus is on friendships and relationships. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of a snapshot of what we talk a little bit about. I'll be infusing some of that information this evening, but it is mainly going to be focused on family and parents and how we can have some of these conversations at home. So I'm from the Pregnancy Care Center. We just moved. We used to be downtown behind the General Hospital, and now we're just off 122nd Street in the Brewery District in there. So we're just getting going with a new location, so that's quite exciting. So if you have questions, put up your hand or shout out. If you have a question online, you can put the question in on the Facebook feed, and we'll get it that way. All right. So we're going to wait, and let's talk a little bit about sex. So thanks for coming, and it's can be a bit of an awkward situation, an awkward topic, but we want to keep it open and have everybody feel really comfortable. And it really is a journey for the courageous at heart, right? Because it can be really awkward to talk about relationships and talk about sexuality and such, but we want it to be comfortable for everybody. So this evening, I'm going to talk about foundational. What does that mean in terms of our family, where God is in our family and what that looks like, understanding the teenager and their world, and then equipping on the how and the what to say with these conversations, right? We just need to know that every family is really different, and you have to figure out what works for you. It's just really unique. And some people say, well, am I too late? How do I do it? And it's never too late to start. But if we're waiting for our children and our youth and our teenagers, if they're asking questions already, then we need to get with it, because that might be our cue to say, hey, we gotta have some conversations here. Because we know in our culture today, that is speaking very, very loudly. Okay. Okay, good. All right, so what does the ideal family look like? No family's perfect, right? We're all on this journey together. And so what does our faith look like within the family structure? We know as parents, we are modeling. Our children learn better from what they see, rather than what we say all the time. So how we model, right? Walking out our faith, building that relationship with God, praying and studying. And what does the Sabbath look like? Solitude and silence, right? Are we displaying the fruits of the Spirit? And how are we talking about the fruits of the Spirit with our children? And what does that look like, right? In terms of a relational atmosphere, how do we get along as family members? Do we laugh? Do we cry together? Do we affirm each other? Do we have fun together? Do we speak truth and honesty with each other, even though it's really hard? What does the structure of our home look like? So are there lots of rules? Are there lots of consequences? How do we affirm each other? Like, how do we structure our days around the family? Are we able to say sorry? Do we show humility? right? As again, children need to know, youth need to know how to say sorry, right? Dealing with different issues. How do we deal with issues? Do we get to the root of it? Do we listen? Do we allow the children to have their space and then come back and be able to share their views without being interrupted? So making the family work together is a lot of work. It's not easy, and we're all on this journey together, right? What are our spiritual beliefs? How do we incorporate our spiritual beliefs, our walk, and our relationship with God? How do we infuse that in our everyday life with our family members? What kind of privileges are available to the family? What kind of privileges around maybe phones or driving cars or going out with their friends? Do we negotiate privileges? Are there consequences when those privileges are broken or overstepped? So how do we deal with that sort of thing as a family? What about social engagements? Right? Do we control what kind of friends they have? Do we have the friends over? Do we set up sort of boundaries with their friends when they can see them, outlining what times they can see them, when they can see them, are they allowed past midnight? All those kind of social aspects of engagement, allowing appropriate and fun times to spend with their friends, right? And then balancing this full integration of morals and spiritual beliefs and structure, having that balance. So youth, children, and teenagers, and there's harmony. But we know that harmony is not always there all the time. There's a little bit of misbalance, right? It wouldn't be normal if we didn't have that. So it is a matter of knowing how we deal with that, right? We have the Word, we have the Bible and all the promises, right? We need to be modeling the true love and how to love each other, like God first loved us, right? And how do we demonstrate that with our children, with our youth, to accept them unconditionally, love them unconditionally, right? We have those promises to so they can feel that unfailing love, right? They need to know that they are accepted by God and by their parents for sure, right? That they are chosen and they're never going to be cast away, that He's always with us, right? We need to pray God's promises with them so they truly believe when they're having a hard time, when they're going through a tough time at school, when a friend's got an issue or got a problem, they can speak some truth, speak some of God's promises, but they won't know that unless we are teaching and speaking that on a daily basis with them as well. And most of all, it's the love that we get from God and from Jesus that's overflowing that comes to them. This is a little model that Josh McDowell wrote in his book, teaching about, talking to your children about sex. And the base, the foundation is for us as parents to have a loving relationship with God and with one another. And again, that's where that foundational modeling comes from, right? And if we can demonstrate that, and it's not going to be perfect 100% of the time, but that is what that's the modeling that occurs. We are then sharing those beliefs and the biblical values that will have a huge influence in having those right actions. Is it going to happen all the time? No, not all the time, but that is the goal. That's the structure. We cannot expect anything without having relationship, and that's why I started talking about the foundation, because it's all about the relationship we have with our children and our teens, right? It's really hard to discipline. It's really hard to have those awkward conversations. It's hard when we haven't had that intentional, loving relationship with them. We can't expect to also one day say, "Hey, I'm gonna have a conversation about sex." And, "Oh, what about pornography?" It's like, what? Oh, they're gonna feel uncomfortable. We have to have that relationship, which is the foundation first. Because a lot of times, if we're just speaking truth without relationship, they may feel that there's that little bit of rejection that can occur. If there's discipline and rules without relationship, that could lead lead to anger and resentment from the children and the teens. So ideally, this is what we like to see happen. What do great parents do? What do we strive to do? They need to know that we're human, right? And we mess up. But we want to provide love and opportunity and supervision, that unconditional love. We want to be able to allow them opportunities where they can grow, where they can learn from their successes as well as their failures, and that they're still going to be loved and accepted, where they can deal with consequences of those particular actions and failures, and that you still have them in the nest. So if they do fail, if they have a consequence, you're there to pick them up and carry them through, right? And that comes through this loving unconditionally, radically accepting. There was a fellow that I listened to a workshop on, his name was Mike Foster, and he said that we as parents have to radically accept our children and our teens, and even the young adults. We just need to radically accept them with all of their successes, with all of their faults, with all of their situations and issues. And that will promote radical ownership for their being responsible and making decisions for themselves, right? We need to grow them up and promote wings instead of strings. We're promoting them, we're growing them in order for them to adequately to fly someday, right? I have 2 young adults. My son is 26, and he's been going to school probably for the last, 6 years, 8 years, 9 years. And he's going to be there for a little bit longer. And my daughter's 24, and she's having a slow, soft transition, moving out to them, moving in and moving out. But it's all great. And I wish I could stand up here and say, I did it awesome. I did it perfectly. But I didn't. We didn't, I should say, me and my husband, Darcy. But we learn from our mistakes. I've learned how to say sorry. I've learned how to confess to my kids, and that's a part of the self-transformation. They need to know that we have not arrived. We are on this journey of parenting, just as they are on their journey of growing up. And so by offering grace to them, then they can offer grace to us when we mess up too. So we want to empower them to be able to make their own choices. Right? So we want to be moving from teaching to training. So when the children are little, we have lots of control. They do what we say, and then as we gradually prepare them for their elementary years, they're listening, they want to do everything right. But as a teenager, they start to get a little uncomfortable. They start to squirm. They start to question and be curious. And this is all good. It's all a natural part of the process of growing up. And so we just need to be continually preparing in order to prepare them to leave. And so that in itself can be really easy. In most cases, but it's sometimes hard. We need to always be providing lots and lots of encouragement, and not shaming them about anything. We want to be a parent who children will come to us, will ask us anything, right? And we're going to get to that in a little bit later. But usually around the junior high, just before junior high, there's much more questions and curiosity, and they're generally more apt to listen to what the parents are saying. But we know that many are carrying cell phones, or they have friends that have cell phones, they have access to the internet, and so they may not come to us for those questions because they have access to Google, they have access to the internet, and so we need to step up and step out and be louder than those voices that they're hearing from the culture outside. And we do that by communicating, right? You listened, you were there, you were the only one that cared for me for what I had to say. And it says, can I ask you something, Jeremy? Sure, Mom, ask me anything you want. Great, go, 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 go. Wait, I asked you, are you going to answer me? Why? Why would I do that? Well, we need you to answer, right? Absolutely. So healthy communication, what does that look like when we have a teenager in the home? Most will respond to quick, short, more frequent interactions, right? We want to do away with the lectures. We want to do away with the sit down and let's have, this face-to-face conversation. Don't always do that as well, right? They learn by example. They learn by modeling. What are we showing? Are we walking beside them? Are we showing them how to, change a tire on the car? Are we showing them how to cook? Are we showing them how to do all these things so we're preparing? I wish I had done that better. I wish I had, I'm not really a good baker, so that really wasn't the thing. But there's things that I wish I could have done. I wish I did a little bit better now that I've got young adults. I mean, they're surviving, they're getting by. But I think we have to provide those opportunities by modeling and doing things beside them so they can learn by example. We need to close our mouth and be quiet in order for our youth and our children to speak more. Listen more than we talk, right? Ask lots of questions. They want to be heard, they want to be affirmed, and they need the space to do that. And so we have to provide that, right? We want to encourage independence. We need to look at where are the appropriate times to talk. Maybe it's walking the dog, maybe it's, while you're baking cookies, maybe it's gaming with your son, right? So you're not sitting, or your daughter, gaming, just doing something fun, doing a puzzle, and then having a conversation that comes up that way. How are we for listening? As adults and as parents, I know this is something that I'm learning, is to be slow to speak, quick to listen. Slow to speak, quick to listen. Right? And active listening, paying attention. We can be really good at multitasking and cutting up vegetables. My teen just came home from school, they're having, some hot chocolate, or they're having a drink and a cookie or whatever, and they wanted to maybe share, this is a good time for them, and I'm trying to listen, but I'm trying to prepare dinner. But to truly listen, we need to put whatever we're doing down and sit down and have some eye contact. Not only are we saying that, hey, you matter, whatever you're saying, I'm listening to you, but it's also modeling. When I go into the high schools, and I ask the students what are some of the biggest issues or the challenges they're facing within relationships today. Number one is communication. And they know why. And it's because of their phones and because they're texting. And they don't spend that time with that one-to-one eye contact communication and teaching and letting them know that, yeah, even as adults, we don't get the communication right 100% of the time. It takes practice. It's a learned art to learn how to assert yourself and articulate and share about your feelings. And if we're not practicing that on a daily basis for everyday fun kind of things, then when we come into relationships or even, dating relationships and it's awkward and uncomfortable, we need to have those skills to be able to practice that, right? So as parents, listening without interrupting, restating what you just heard, so paraphrasing, this is what I heard, I just want to check, is this what I'm hearing? Okay, identifying any feelings that were being expressed. Open-ended questions. So what is an open-ended question? Anybody?
No right and wrong.
What's that?
No right and wrong.
No, yes, no. It's, you open it up. So was your day good? Yep. Did you have an awesome day? Yep. No. Right? I'm seeing some smiles there under their mask. And so it's like, what was so great about your day? If you could change something about your day today, what would it be? And then they have to think, we want to get that critical thinking, right? So open-ended questions and having some empathy, putting yourself in their shoes, thinking back as when we were teenagers. Yeah, they have a lot more challenges than what we have, but again, there's adolescence can be a fun and exciting time, but it's also a difficult time for many. Ask lots of questions, right? Stimulating critical thinking. Okay, so understanding the teenager. So we've looked at family and what we can do to structure that family, having God in the center and be infused with our biblical values and our beliefs, right? And now we're switching over to sort of having to understand about the teenager. And we know that teen years are different, right? Kimball said, understanding the teen world, you raise your teens to live in the zoo or to survive in the jungle. So this is kind of, it's like, we're going to live in the zoo or survive in the jungle. We've got to do a little bit of both, right? We need to anticipate so they can learn and guide them, ask lots of questions, see what's going on, and we need to prepare our hearts for them and have a heart of compassion for them and truly trying to understand where they're coming from, because their world is so different than what our world was back in the day. And times have changed. The culture is very different, what they're exposed to. Mark Gretzky has a really good book, Raising Teens in a Contrary Culture. I highly recommend it. It's really based on intentionally connecting with your teenager and how can we do that. And part of that is understanding what they're going through, right? They're exposed to lots of images, and particularly online through media that have lasting impressions on their brain. They lack genuine relationships. When you think of Instagram and Snapchat, if you ask them if they have how many loyal friends, and a lot of those loyal friends are connected through even like church groups and youth groups and small groups, and trying to get through that. They don't need hundreds, they need a few good, strong people, just like Jesus had. He had his 12, and then he had his inner circle that did life with them. Because everything is just so shallow, and it's hard for them to realize, what does a loyal friend look like, right? So they have a hard time expressing themselves. A lot of times it's about a performance-driven and an appearance. Now we have marijuana that's legalized. Alcohol is legalized. Lots of bullying that's occurring, like all the porn sites that are available. Entitlement, thinking that they're entitled. Like there's lots and lots of challenges that they're faced up against. And then we have barriers on a general scope of what makes it hard for us as parents to actually intentionally connect, right? There's busy lives, double income families, people are working, people are going to different things in the evening, and there may be sports, other extracurricular, lack of intentionality, poor communication, technology. Again, what are we modeling when it comes to technology for our children? Are phones put away at the dinner table? Do you have a docking station where they stay at night? Are there TV and computers in one's room? Like let's have a healthy space and move them out. So we have to think about how we're modeling that kind of stuff. So just the busyness, the consumerism, and scared of making mistakes, and we're all going to mess up, right? So when we think of the teenager today, right, they are amazing, creative, innovative people. We need to tap into that, right? There can be some confusing times. They're trying to fit in. They're trying to be accepted. They're trying to find out what is their identity and what does that look, and walking their faith walk, and how does that apply when they go to school, right? And so there's so many challenges. A lot of them have lots of drive. They're really ambitious. They want to make a difference. They're aware of global issues, right? And then there's also many that are really stressed and feeling really pressured. We need to talk a little bit about the teenage brain, but I'm not going to talk about it. We're going to watch a video on YouTube, Understanding the Teenage Brain, and it's quite good.
prune itself. You start carving away some of those leaves, some of the smaller branches, even some of the larger branches. And the reason for the pruning is to specialize the brain. While the child is developing in ways that are really generalized, learning everything they can about everything they can, an adolescent is going to begin to find their passion, to actually find things they like, things they really love doing, and to drive their development in that way. So pruning is actually a use it or lose it principle underneath it. That if you don't use something, you're gonna lose it. So if you like sports or like dancing or like music, do those things so you continue to establish those circuits. The second thing that happens in the remodeling adolescent brain is myelin formation. Myelin is a healthy sheath that allows connected neurons to communicate with each other in a much more effective way. How? It's 100 times faster, the signal that's sent down a neuron to communicate with another neuron, 100 times faster, and after it fires off, it's 30 times shorter the resting period that happens. 30 times 100 is 3,000, so when you've put down myelin, you've made your neurons communicate 3,000 times more effectively. That's a great thing. Now the great thing too is that you as an adolescent can actually use the focus of your attention to be aware of your emotions, aware of other people, to be engaging in activities, to be doing things with your thoughts that actually reinforce the parts of your brain you want to hold on to. So the good news about the remodeling story is that a field called neuroplasticity, how the brain responds to experience, shows us that what you do with your mind can change the activity and therefore the structure of your brain. So if you then come up with the statement that the ultimate goal of brain remodeling is to make an integrated brain, to differentiate areas, that's the pruning, and myelinate them, that's the linkage. When you increase differentiation and linkage, you make the brain more integrated. And an integrated brain is the pathway toward well-being. And you can do mind-sight exercises. These are exercises that increase insight, empathy, and integration. And if you do them as an adolescent, and you can also do them as an adult, you'll actually increase the integration of your brain as your brain is growing, not just during adolescence, but throughout the lifespan. And what's the outcome of integration? When integration is made visible, it's kindness and compassion. And so what we see through adolescent development is that our relationships become built on connections that are deep and filled with honoring each other's vulnerability, that's kindness, and supporting connections that are compassionate, filled with a sense of caring about other people and wanting to help them. This is the kind of world we can build as we move through life and support each other in our development.
So the brain is under major construction, right? When they're in an adolescence. And it allows us to understand, when we learn a little bit about it, that some of the emotions that are really high, because that critical thinking part of the brain, the frontal cortex, that's the part of the brain that helps us make decisions, that assesses the consequences. That's the part of the brain that doesn't fully develop until their mid-20s, like 25 or 27. And so when he's saying, expose them to lots of different healthy experiences, healthy friends, laying that foundation, right? That's what we want to accommodate. That's what we want to initiate within the family, and with that circle of friends to promote that empathy, to promote that kindness and compassion. Because we know that the teens are very easily influenced. They want to fit in. They're trying to find themselves, right? They're wondering if they're okay. And so they're going to look outside. They're going to look for their peers. Where are they getting their affirmation from, right? And so they need that guidance. And that guidance from us, but also the moral compass is God, right? And so not conforming any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transforming by the renewing of our mind. So thinking of how that brain is influenced, right? So we need to help them with decision making. They need guidance, support, and opportunities. They need to learn how to negotiate. They need to learn how to communicate, so they can use those critical thinking skills, looking at the consequences, positive and negatives, with making a decision. This is a little acronym that I learned at a conference. It's based on STOP. So if the child's got has got a choice that they have to make, say they want to go to a function or a gathering or a party, but they have to work the next day, or they have a hockey game or a soccer game, they're stating the issue and then talking about their needs. What do they want to do? What do they want to get out? What do they want to? What's the outcome of that particular thing that they want to go to? What are their feelings about that? How do they feel? What are their options? Looking at the positive, what's the worst option? What's the healthiest option? Are there any alternatives? What would they feel by going to both, right? And praying about those options, right? What is the kind of, where do they get that peace? Where do they feel the most comfortable? And then picking that best option. All right, so understanding that they're going through lots of changes, hormonal changes, physical changes, the brain changes, so they need that compassion, they need that time, especially when we start thinking about relationships and looking at sexuality and thinking about what they're exposed to. So moving into, what does God say about sex? Again, we have to come down to that foundation of our beliefs, that sex is beautiful, it's wonderful. He designed it. He designed it to be this most intimate expression of love between a woman and a man who are married. And so that is something that we need to be talking very openly and very matter-of-factly, that this is the belief. And there's lots in the Bible about that, right? That our body is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord. That our bodies are seen as temples of the Holy Spirit, right? And that a man would leave his father and his mother and be united in his wife. Like, these are all beautiful, beautiful biblical verses that help guide us when we're making those decisions. And that we need to frame it in a way that sex is God's design. It's His design for not only for pleasure, but for population, right? And that He cares not only just about our physical pleasure, but He cares about our spiritual and our emotional and our physical being. And so it's looking at the person as an entirety, and that we're not defined by that sexual behavior or that sexuality. And I think that's something that we need to keep coming back to as well. So when we look at what are some of the views of God's way when it comes to the choices in regards to sex and sexual behavior compared to what the culture's way or what the view of the world is, it's complete opposite, right? He loves us, He wants to protect us, He wants to provide for us emotionally, physically. He wants to protect our marriages, right? The fertility and the fact that it's His design between two people within the sanctification of marriage. Culture's way is very different. This is what many teens are being exposed to, that sex is no big deal. It's casual, right? It's normal. You don't have to wait, right? It's abnormal to wait. Who needs commitment? And that waiting is abnormal. It's, just live in the moment. There's no consequences. And as much as we don't want to focus on the consequences, the reality is that there are. And so that still needs to be a part of the discussion, right? So what does culture say? We spend in the high school a lot of time talking about the influences of culture, and to get the students to sort of think about and because they're inquisitive, they're asking questions, they're exposed to it, right? That they're very aware that sex is everywhere. Some would say we live in a very hypersexualized culture where you know, women and sometimes even children and even men are treated as objects, right? We are exposed to soft pornography in just mainstream media. A culture desires instant gratification. We've become a very impatient culture. We want everything now, instant messaging, instant coffee, like it's now. Why would we want to wait for anything? Because we can have it now in the moment. So, you know, they're hearing these messages, and when we apply that to waiting to be sexually active, waiting and practicing abstinence, it's like, you know, for many it's so foreign, but that is something that we need to bring up and say, this is for our own protection. This is something that God wants for us, and also for, as parents want for their children. The sense of entitlement, right? Not only the teens, I think we as adults have acquired that. You know, I'm entitled. I've earned that. I'm entitled to have this. I'm entitled to do A, B, and C because I've worked hard, or I've earned this money and I'm entitled to do it that way. Whereas it's like, okay, so where's the sacrifice? Where's the waiting? And as a result, we've become very desensitized to sex in general, right? It's like, yeah, it's no big deal. That's the kind of messages that we get from mainstream media, whether it's through TVs and movies, and having these sort of very open conversations with what is out in the media and on TV and shows and music videos, like talking very openly about how women are expressed or exploited, is a conversation that I think many teens are very open because they believe in justice and social justice, and so it's important to sort of get them to critically think about where's the value of a human in all of this, right? Teens and pornography. Right, we need to be having conversations very openly about pornography, what it is. You know, many people say that this generations of teenagers are the first generation to have pornography in their back pocket because they are carrying around cell phones, smartphones that have unlimited access to the internet. The largest group watching online porn is between the ages of 12 and 17. Why? Because they're curious. It's normal. We want them to be curious. We want them to ask questions, but we want them to come to us, right? And yet everything is saying, oh, you can just press a couple of buttons and it's right there. All right, and so we need to be talking about it in a very non-shaming, non-judgmental way. The average exposure is about 11, and that's mainly because of the access of the internet, and it's actually getting lower. Okay, so when we think, oh, we need to be talking about this. Culture Reframed, which is one of the resources that I put on here, they have, and she has Gail Dines is the director of it. It's out of Boston, and they have an amazing program, adult program, teen program, all on pornography and exploitation to kind of teach parents how to, you know, to learn about it and how to engage our children to have really critical thinking conversations about it. So I highly recommend Culture Reframed. The other really good website and organization is Fightthenewdrug.org. Again, this is a very good website to really look at the impact of pornography on us as social beings. It looks at it, how does it affect our heart, how does it affect our minds, how does it affect culture and society as a whole when we look at the implications and, of pornography and the sex trade industry. So very, very good. And again, looking at what pornography does, it gives a very distorted view of sex. It's not as what God had designed it, and there's no feelings, there's no emotions. There's a lot of times there's no consent displayed. Consent is that affirmative yes to certain behaviors, and so this is just something that we need to address. And this porn-induced erectile dysfunction, we're seeing more and more young boys who have been consumers of porn at a much younger age, and so when they become of age and young adults, to be able to have sexual intimacy with a person, because they have rewired their brain to become sexually aroused to the pornography on the screen, there's a disconnect between their brain and their sexual arousal, and they can't get an erection. So this is something that we are starting to see more and more with young adults, young adult males. And we are seeing, you know, they say the boys are the vulnerable population in terms of consuming pornography, but we're seeing an increase in consumption with girls as well. And again, in high school, we get conversations saying, you know, do I have to look like this? Do I have to perform like this in order to keep a partner or have a relationship going? And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when they're going to be exposed. So we need to talk about it. And again, looking at how porn twists what God plans for sex, right? God's plan is that bonding between a husband and wife, and them alone. It's the most intimate expression, pleasure for pleasure and procreation. For porn's plan, it's casual, it's meaningless. It's done alone or with others in person. Usually women, and some men are seen as objects. That's objectification, right? It's sexually exploited. So again, this is something that we need to speak just very openly and just saying, this is something that you may see. I want you to come to me as soon as you see it, right? I've given out there's a resource sheet there, and it gives them an outline as to what can parents do if their child comes to them and says, hey, this keeps popping up when I'm playing my game, or yeah, I saw this at so-and-so's house and I just can't get the vision or the picture out of my mind. How do we react? How do we deal with it? Okay, so I've given that in the... These are just some of the warning signs. If you're suspicious that maybe a child or a teen might be consuming pornography, looking at the language being more sexualized, jokes, more inappropriate, lack of empathy, maybe viewing or masturbating for multiple hours, day or night, decreased interest or declining socialization with their friends, school, or extracurricular activities, lack of interest in their typical adolescent activities or even dating, lots of secretness around the computer or their phones, talking about privacy and trying to protect their passwords. These are all kind of little red flags that maybe there's something that they're hiding or there's secrecy, and that's one thing that pornography does. It promotes a lot of secrecy and then a lot of shame, and this is not something that we want to promote as a healthy sexual experience. Sexting, just to be aware that this is a topic that we need to be talking about, because it's happening a lot within teenage relationships. Sending explicit words or pictures to someone of interest, to a dating partner. The big issue around sexting is that many teens don't realize that it's illegal to have naked photos on their phone or even sharing it. They can be charged if those pictures get put out on the internet without someone's consent with possession or distributing of child pornography. It is illegal. And it might be consensual, like when we're talking to high school students, you know, it's happening. You know, the average high school relationship used to be about 6 months, but now I'm hearing it's more like 2 to 4 months. But within that time frame, they spend that time. They may agree to consent to sharing some photos. But what happens when that relationship breaks up? That trust is broken. Someone's heart is broken. And on that spur of the moment, that spontaneous out of being hurt, they react from that emotional part of the brain and they share it. And once that's shared, they don't have control over it. And so that's why when we think about the critical thinking part of the brain, right, if they're getting asked or getting pressured to send pictures, we really need to talk about what happens when it's gone. They have no control over it. stepping back and counting to 10 and taking some slow, deep breaths before they press send, because they're getting their online world mixed up with their real world, right? And again, it's because they're feeling like they need to fit in, or they need to do this, or it's a pressure. And so giving them that confidence to be able to say no. And there's some really good websites and apps out there where youth can actually send a funny meme saying, hey, I'm not into that, or just where they don't have to say no. But they should be comfortable with saying no. All right. So what are teens saying? Teens saying that they want us to talk, right? As much as it's awkward, they want to hear from us as parents. They want to talk. They want to hear about waiting. Like, abstinence is a little bit threatening, but really abstinence means that you're choosing to wait. God wants us to wait till marriage. Right? That's the ultimate, right? He's also given us free will. He's given us minds to think, and he knows that we will use that free will, and sometimes we will make mistakes, but he loves us unconditionally, and there's forgiveness every time in his mercy, right? But many teens doing surveys like the one in 2012 from the National Campaign to End Teen Pregnancy in the States, 87% said they want to have open, honest conversations with their parents. And if they would actually put off and delay that sexual behavior. So how do we promote them talking about healthy relationships with our teens? Because we don't want to just focus on the sex. We want to focus on promoting healthy relationships. First and foremost, it's building friendships, right? Defining what's healthy and unhealthy, dating, crushes. So what kind of qualities do you look for in a friend? At the Pregnancy Care Center, we have 4 non-negotiable qualities that we encourage the students to think about. What do you think those would be? Those that you are here. What would you think a non-negotiable? What would be a quality that you would want your friend to have? Anybody? Honesty. Yeah. Trustworthiness. That's 2 out of the 4. Right on. What's that? Loyalty. Very good.
Friendship.
Sorry?
Friendship.
Friendship. Nope, that's not one of them. We got honesty, loyalty, respect, and trustworthiness. So in our classes, we break that down and we ask the students to define, what does it mean to be a loyal friend? What does it mean to honesty? What does respect look like? Right? There's a lot of disrespect that's being displayed through the media. Sometimes it's not even displayed in home, and we want to advocate that. And for the 5th one, like those are the 4 non-negotiables because they are the foundation of any relationship. So when we're talking friendship, when we're talking romantic relationships, marriage relationships, we need those qualities. And then faith. Having friends that are more like-minded people. But we do know that you can have a friend that doesn't come to church, and you can bring them to church. So that is good. But when it comes to dating and romantic, it's nice if we can advocate and encourage to be dating someone who's walking the same faith walk as you. Right, so that for some people is one of the really important ones. So we're looking and encouraging emotional intelligence, right? So making sure, what is emotional intelligence? They're able to communicate well, communicate their needs. They have some self-control. They have self-awareness, right? They're able to listen. They're able to adapt to certain situations. They're able to apologize, right? They're not afraid to be themselves. They can assert themselves. And they let go of mistakes, okay? So we're looking at emotional tension. How do they deal with conflict? Are they able to listen? Are they able to, step away and give them some time and then be able to express why what's going on and why they're hurt? What is the golden rule? What's the golden rule in a friendship? Anybody?
To accept the friend as they are.
Accept them as they are? Yeah, right? Do unto others as you do to yourself. We say that is the golden rule. And now there's a platinum rule, right? Treating others the way they want to be treated, right? Because not everybody wants to be treated the way you want to be treated. So in order to figure out how do they want to be treated, you have to engage with them. You have to have conversation. You have to find out what are their likes, what are their dislikes. You know, how do they want to be treated? And then displaying the fruits of the Spirit. So looking at a friend, and again, we don't need hundreds of friends, we need a couple really good, close friends, and how do we advocate those? Looking at relationships, healthy and unhealthy relationships. This is a really good website that it's called One Love. joinonelove.org is the website. And it has some really good information about unhealthy and healthy relationships. And the website was developed by a mother and a friends of a daughter of her daughter. She was actually in a healthy relationship in university, and it slowly went to unhealthy and abusive. And she actually got murdered by this man. And they actually have a movie that shows how it happened. And every one of her friends, when they were doing the investigations, they saw red flags, and nobody had the courage to step up and say, you know, I'm really concerned by the way that he's treating you, or I'm concerned that you don't have a voice, or I'm concerned on how, you know, and nobody came up. So as a result, they are now going throughout the states educating on healthy and unhealthy relationships. So this is a really good, looking at the signs. So we need to talk. Teenagers want to know about friendships. They want to know that it's normal to have feelings of liking and attraction of other people. You know, what is an infatuation? It's something that starts really quickly and ends really quickly. It's usually full of emotions. What does it mean to be in love? Is it going to be love in high school? Probably not. But again, because the emotional part of the brain in the teenager is so strong and so active and overpowering over that critical thinking part of the brain, it does feel like love. And so we have to acknowledge those feelings and affirm those feelings and not push them down and deny what the teens are going through, and to help them recognize to have safe relationships. Because the question of dating may come up, right? And there's not a lot of information in the Bible about dating. Again, it comes down to what are you comfortable? What are you comfortable in your family? It's like, well, we believe that dating, for the purpose of dating, is to find someone who you're going to marry. And we believe dating doesn't start until you're, you know, in college or you've moved out, or dating starts when you're in high school. So again, it's one of those conversations that needs to happen. Most teenagers don't want to disappoint their parents. And so we have to be able to let them know what are our expectations around that, and how can we help them have the relationships and date safe. So it could be very natural. It sort of gives could also cause a bit of distraction and heartache. It could make them some optimistic. It could teach them empathy. So again, there's some real positives, but there's some real cautions as well, which is the reality. And it really does depend too on the maturity of your child. Like some families say, well, you can't date until you're 18 or until you're in grade 9. But there are some families will say, it's all on maturity. You prove to me that you can juggle your school, get your grades, have your part-time job, do your chores, and play your soccer or whatever it is, then you can have a significant friend, right? A romantic friend, whatever that's going to, however you're going to term it. But it has to be in a conversation. So sitting down and saying, okay, what are your expectations? What do you want to get out of this relationship? Right? What are you looking for? Most high school students that we engage with are looking for someone just to do some life with. Go to a movie, shoot some baskets, do homework together. They can share their emotions, right? They just want someone to connect with. What are the boundaries? right? So you can see them on Saturday night. You're not going to be home alone. You're going to be in the main area of the house. All the doors need to be open. Nobody stays after midnight. So these are boundaries that the parent and the teenager will best discuss together to put down, if you want to, on a contract, right? How are you planning out the dates? Are you going to encourage group dating, coming over and playing board games, right? So you can interact with that person, them, or the group, right? And just teaching them how to problem solve and communicate honestly and effectively, right? Knowledge is power. So we want to start sharing that information as early as we can. Okay, some would say as soon as they start talking, as soon as they start exploring their bodies, that's when you can start talking, right? But usually, once puberty changes start to occur, that's when parents really need to think, whoa, maybe we're a little late to the race here, we need to catch up, or to sit down and say, yeah, let's go for a walk, we need to have a conversation. Or it might be you see somebody's interested in someone, or there's an attraction that will spark that interest to start talking about puberty changes, talking about sexual behavior, what is sexual activity, and the risks and the consequences. Talking about boundaries so you can establish them early, right? A boundary is there to protect you. And we need to set those boundaries as adults for our children and really communicate those dating standards and expectations. It's to promote respect, right? Being able to say no or yes, having that open communication. There's all types of boundaries. Physical, how far does one go physically within this relationship? Emotionally, how do you feel when you're with this person? The spiritual, how does your faith align with your behavior within this relationship? The sexual, and there's also digital. What sort of things do you post pictures online? Do you tag this person online? Do you share passwords, which we don't encourage? But there's the whole digital boundaries that again need to be talked about very openly. Any questions? Kind of been rambling here. Any thoughts? Any questions? Is it kind of what you're looking for? Yes, sort of. All right, so the talk is chatting, it's questioning, right? It's conversing and it's dialoguing. It's not lecturing, right? We don't want to promote lecturing, right? The goal is to maintain an open, honest, loving relationship, that confident that you accept them and love them unconditionally. Ask more questions, wait for response, provide information that meets their needs, and incorporate the faith values. So what are some of the barriers? Why is it so awkward, right? Talking about sex. Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing, right? Especially if we haven't been introduced to it. Like if we think back to how our parents had that conversation, we didn't have a lot to go on. It wasn't modeled very well, right, for the average adult these days. And so it can become quite awkward, and we can be quite openly fearful if we didn't have the right question, or we didn't have the right answer for the question, fearful if they'll ask us what we did, or thinking that if we say too much that they might do too much. The lack of knowledge, I don't know anything, they know so much more than me, right? But we have to put all those fears aside and just say, they expect us, they need us to do that, right? our youth and our children can learn from our mistakes and our successes just as much as what they can. All right, but we need to come to from a place of vulnerability as well and say, hey, you know what? I've learned a lot from some of the mistakes I made. I wish I had done something different. I want things better for you, and that's why we're having these conversations, right? So curiosity is really important. We need to anticipate that. Start early with like 100 one-minute conversations, right? You're preparing dinner and talking about, how many people are dating, or you had a sex ed class today, what kind of things did you cover? Or talking maybe about a movie that you saw, or a relationship that you see in a TV show, and just sort of bring that up in a small conversation. Looking at maturity, appropriateness, and age appropriate. Just because you have, a 14-year-old boy versus, they may be totally not ready to be talking. They're into gaming, they're hanging out with their friends, there's no whisper of girls or relationships, and they just don't want to. They're just not ready. Or you might have a 14-year-old who's, into hockey or into sport, and he's got girls texting or calling, and it's like, okay, this is going to be the kind of time that you have to talk about those things. So you know your child the best. You know, in terms of their maturity and appropriateness, on what to talk about. Follow your instincts and being confident. We have the Holy Spirit. We have that inclination. We need to be comfortable with that as well. Using brief and frequent conversations. Don't exaggerate all the negative consequences. Right? We need to, again, keep coming back that sex is this beautiful thing between a man and a woman, and this is what God has designed, and to make it as positive as possible. Connect with them however you can. That even might mean texting with them. That might mean doing something that they enjoy, even though you may not. Like, connect with them so you can have that sort of one-on-one time with them, so it's not so uncomfortable. Typically, guys in particular don't like to be, eye to eye. They'd rather be shooting baskets and having a conversation. Whereas girls can maybe, sit side by side with someone and have that conversation. So again, just gauge your own children as you know best. Being that askable parent, asking those open-ended questions. How does something make you feel? How did that work out for you? Again, using statements like, I noticed you kind of turned away when this came up on TV. I was wondering if I could get your opinion on this. Or I got some news, there was a newsletter on school. What are your thoughts on that? Or what happened at school, right? I had one of my friends, not mentioning any names, their daughter was caught up in a sexting situation. Have you heard anything about that, right? And just seeing, branching off that conversation like that. And then asking for their opinion, right? Asking for their opinion. Would you like my opinion? Do you want my thoughts? And if they say no, then you don't give it. Or not yet, or you're sensing that they want to be quiet, and that's perfectly fine. So how would you change these? How would you change these questions? None of your friends are doing drugs, are they? How would you change that to a more open-ended question? What do you think? What's that? Right, yeah. There's a higher incidence of drugs. The opioid crisis. Have you heard anything about drugs? What are your thoughts, right? Yeah. Are you having sex? That's a pretty straight from the mouth. What he was like, Mom, no. What do you think of teen pregnancy? Right? What do you think of teenagers having sex? Or, right, what do you think is a good, so just ask for their opinion. You're wanting to hear from them. Do you know how you can get an STI? That's a sexually transmitted infection. Right? That's a yes, no. Right? Yes, of course I do. Right? Sexually transmitted infection rate is really high amongst teens. What are your thoughts on that? Have you learned about sexually transmitted infections, or what sexually transmitted infections have you learned about at school so far, right? Yeah, so that's just an example. So what are the benefits of abstinence? What are the benefits of waiting, right? Having that loving relationship with God and walking in obedience with Him and through His love and His acceptance for His plan and His design. Not having any guilt, any feelings, any worries or concerns about possible unplanned pregnancies or sexually transmitted infections. We know that those who choose to wait, they have more confidence. There's a higher self-esteem, right? They are able to assert themselves. There's not that concern or worry. They really do build those healthy relationships. Oh, went backwards. Talking about refusal skills. So we want to help them practice saying no to the little things. So if they have to say no to the big things, they have no problem, right? First and foremost, blaming your parents. I couldn't do that. It'd kill me, right? No, I'm not ready. It's just saying no, suggesting another activity, using body language, pushing away, delay tactics, walking away, telling, oh, I forgot to walk the dog, oh, I've got to put the lasagna in, and then leave. Hey, thanks, but I'd rather not, right? So they have practice saying no to lots of little things, and so they need to be feeling confident to be able to say no to feeling any kind of pressure sexually or sexting or anything like that. And encourage them not to say sorry, right? If they're feeling pressured into doing something, that they shouldn't have to say sorry. No is no. Saying no, that person has the power, right? So often as teens, they worry about what the other person's thinking, and so they don't share their true feelings. And have an exit plan, right? Talking about, sometimes we get into situations where we need to leave right away. It's good to have a code word or a code phrase that if your child is at a social gathering or a social event and things are starting to get a little unruly or they don't feel comfortable there, they text you the code word like pizza or Doritos, and you know that you don't have to ask questions. There's that trust issue. You're there to pick them up. No questions asked. Okay? And so, again, that's given them the confidence to think critically that they need to get out of the situation. So, what is sexual abstinence? Avoiding sexual activity. So knowing what that is. Sexual activity is any behavior that it involves the genitals and the exchange of bodily fluids. And so sexual abstinence then is waiting, not engaging in any of those kind of behaviors. In our programs in high school, we talk about the line of progression of physical intimacy. How am I doing for time? We're okay? So physical intimacy. And so we have green zone, orange zone, and red zone. And so the green zone is getting to know the person, spending time with them. The next card is maybe holding hands and hugging. The next card is holding hands and hugging. And then one of them was attraction. And so you can stay in the green zone. You're not going to get pregnant. You're just going to have fun. You're just kind of doing life, right? Most teens are quite comfortable in that green zone, right? Then you have the orange zone. So the orange zone is a little bit more risky. We call that simple kissing. A little peck on the cheek, a little peck on the lips. You know, it's not gonna be earth-shattering, but you have to think about what's happening in the brain, right? Where is that possibly going to be leading? And so by doing this exercise as well, it gives students a visual to see, this is where I need to say no. This is where my boundary is. Then we have French kissing and explaining. French kissing is tongues touching tongues. And so what we need to, and sharing of saliva, and letting them know that sexual arousal starts in the brain, and it can start at French kissing. And for some people, they can feel sexually aroused at French kissing. So it's important to know this is a normal reaction. It's a normal physical response. So you have to be prepared for that response and the action going forward. Okay? So orange zone. And then we get into the red zone, and this can be a normal progression. Okay? Red zone is anything that occurs, we call it Star Trek touching. Star Trek touching is kind of corny. Hands boldly going where no hands have gone before. So they're exploring each other's body, and it's kind of corny. The old people get it. The teens do get it, but they're just like, oh, they roll their eyes. It's like, okay. But again, it's a common thing that can occur. So how do you respond? And is that your boundary? And how do you say no? Right? And then the next is the sexual behavior that involves the genitals, so oral and vaginal sex. And then looking at what's happening, what are the risks, what are the possible consequences. So we do that line of progression. I did have a slide, but I didn't put it in, sorry. So looking at some of the risks factors for teen sex then, there tends to be a higher risk for teen pregnancy from families that are separated or cohabitating, divorced, receiving public assistance, don't have any kind of religious or faith-based, have a sibling that's pregnant, a lack of parental guidance or a history of abuse, where they have friends who are a little bit older, they're not doing as well at school, using drugs and alcohol, and have had sex before. So again, recognizing the risk factors and trying to avoid those with your teens, and looking at the consequences, the unplanned pregnancies, emotional attachment, and the sexually transmitted infections. And certainly I'm not going to go into them this evening, but this emotional attachment, there's not a lot of research on that, like there is on unplanned pregnancies and the choices that one has to make. But we know that especially when people engage in that red zone, there's a bonding that can occur, and that bonding makes it harder when the relationship breaks up. If someone's just in the green zone and they're having fun, it's the relationship, I'm not really seeing eye to eye, or I've got other interests, and the relationship breaks up, it's like, okay. But when there has been that connection on a deeper level, it does sometimes make it harder with the relationship breaking up. And I hear in high school, even with the students, right, that's where a lot of the counselors spend a lot of their time, is helping students navigate through these breakups, through these relationships. And so as a parent, it's really important that we just say, oh, it's just high school, it's just puppy love, they'll get over it. But what we need to recognize is sometimes those experiences in high school, even if they don't even have that sexual intimacy, that closeness and what they share, when those relationships break up, it's important to check in to see how the teenager's doing emotionally, and whether or not they want to talk to you or talk to the counselor or somebody else. It's really important, because some of those scars and those hurts, if they're not dealt with, they can rear their heads later on in life, and so that's really important. So, So we need to tell our children and our teens that, we strive for sexual abstinence, for them to wait until marriage for sexual behavior. Looking at, different types of contraceptions that we know abstinence is 100% safe 100% of the time, and that they can still get pregnant with using other forms of contraception, because there's elements of failure. And we know that certainly condom use reduces the reduces the risk of some sexually transmitted infections, but not all of them. It's not 100%. So buying teens time, right? Young person may not have sex tonight if you talk and make them tell them that you care. Keep talking and maybe they won't have sex this year. Talking, and maybe they won't have it until they're in a committed relationship like marriage. So every time we take that time, engage intentionally with our teens and our youth, and having these 1-minute conversations, you're telling them that that you care and helping them enjoy their teen years. So, yeah, so I hope this kind of helps. It's a lot of information, and certainly we could get into the nitty-gritty of what to tell, but I think when we look at teens as a whole, right, the foundation is what they're getting from us from our relationship with God, our relationship with them, and how we can relate with them, and helping them move into relationships at school and in their community, and looking what is healthy, what's unhealthy, and giving them the opportunity to really explore that and focus on the healthy relationships, and realize that sex part is just a real small part. The most important thing is to really promote the healthy relationships, and knowing that God is a loving God. He's a forgiving God, right? And we all make mistakes, right? And He forgives us. He loves us unconditionally. And sometimes those mistakes that we made yesterday, we have to leave them there. We have to lay them at the cross, right? And don't walk in that condemnation, because He gives us that freedom, right? Yeah. Any questions? Any thoughts? Yes?
So, I like what you said. Do you present this at the Catholic schools, junior school as well as junior high and high school? In the past, we have done quite a few junior high Catholic schools, but as of late, we're only really doing high schools, and I don't really know why. Well, I'll give you an example. Some of the teachers, if they don't know what the pregnancy care stands for, we have a post-abortion program at the Pregnancy Care Center for women and men who have gone through an abortion and they need healing. But they see that and they think, oh, we're supportive of abortion, but we're a faith-based organization, and we're all about promoting life and helping the needs of the mother and the child. And so a lot of principals will see that and they'll say no, because they don't believe in abortion, or and so they don't invite us in. So it's purely by invitation. But we hit most of the big high schools. Like we go to O'Leary, we go to O'Brien, we go to a couple in surrounding areas. But I would love to get into more junior highs. The reason why I say is because when you talk about faith, yes, you cannot have this in public school because they don't have that circumstance around it. But yet I'm talking about Catholic schools. And why do we have to go to the principal and not to the Catholic school board directly, who can certainly suggest schools that you can have this? And maybe once when they're having the sitting, maybe I have to attend one of the hearings and suggest them, because junior high is the one where we have to target this.
Yeah.
High school is too late. So something that has to be addressed to the trustees.
Yes, yeah, right. And I think sometimes if they get input from parents like yourself, and saying this is an organization that has some good information, it's faith-based, we'd like to see it come into the schools, that would be excellent. And I think in the last almost 2 years with COVID, I think the teachers are so overworked over everything and just to invite somebody in, it's just a lot of work too.
Well, our ward trustee stepped down, so if there's opportunity, if I let my name stand, if I get elected, I'm going to bring this up.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with parents reaching out to trustees. I've done it myself directly, and that's their job, is to represent their constituents. So, by all means, it's a good idea.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, we did quite a few Zoom. It's not as much fun for the students. Yeah, I tried to incorporate some online interaction for the students, and they like that. But I would much rather be in the classroom and connect with the eye to eye with the kids. Yeah.
That's a very good presentation for that.
Presentation is excellent, like the way you started it. And I really liked it.
Thank you. Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying it should be more for junior high school, because that's where everything starts. Right? So.
Yeah, that is where everything starts. But I think high school students, they still need to be reminded and affirmed. Yes. They need to say, hey, it's okay to say no. Hey, it's okay that you're not weird or different if you're choosing to wait. They need to still hear that message in a very positive way in high school as well. But
correct.
Oh. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
Have you presented at Austin O'Brien School?
All the time.
Okay, good, because I'm on the parent council, and if you didn't, I would be
addressing that. I've been going to Austin O'Brien for over 10 years. And there's a few teachers that always invite us back because they know it, right? Yeah, it's just a matter of going out. And I've had some student teachers say, wow, this is so good. We didn't even get this in high school or even in university, and yeah.
Well, and Allison and I had a conversation initially about trying to, because she can gear this towards presentation for the kids, obviously, too, right? And we would like to do that with maybe our youth group or something within the parish, but of course it's hard with COVID restrictions to be able to have those groups and have those kids gathering and have these kinds of presentations for them. So we're hoping that once the restrictions change, we can have her come back and we can. You said it was going to be a pizza.
Pizza night and have some fun.
And that's what I was just talking to at the beginning. I said, as soon
they
as
should have some fun, and at the same time,
like the winter goes, we're coming into spring, and have it in the hall. We can have pizza, music, dance, but same time bring this message.
So we will. We'll do it when we can.
not so much, too much that
No.
You just say
Just
for
narrow down.
loyalty, trust, the respect.
Yeah.
The foundation that is also. Yes.
Good. Glad.
Any more questions or comments from anyone?
What did you girls think?
I thought it was okay.
No, come on. I want to hear.
I don't know. It's like, I think Ron's really right about it, though. Like, high school is almost too late for a lot of people to be hearing this, because I know a lot of people that have gone through a lot of the things that you presented in early ages of junior high. Like, she's in grade 8, and like, I know she doesn't know half the stuff that half the kids I went to school with in grade 8 know. Like, that they already knew in grade 8. Like, people, and it's not just, and like, it is peer pressure within friends and stuff like that too. But I know a lot of people that have been brought up in really bad families that have taught them stuff like this. And it's just, it does really need to be talked about a lot more.
So, yeah.
One thing I noticed in this project, because this is for parents also, is when we have adults and teenagers, parents have to learn not to say no, but reason it out things with them. Because what I've realized is that initially, no, you shouldn't be doing this. Or if the kids ask, can I? No. Do not say no. Reason it out. Because that's where rebelling starts. And I think it was not mentioned here, like don't say no to your kids, but reason it out. Like
Negotiate.
Like
Yeah.
if a child who's in only elementary is asking for a cell phone, so you question them. Explain to me why you need a cell phone. When are you going to use it? Rather than, no, you can't have a cell phone. You're only in so you're shutting them down.
Right.
And that's where rebellion starts.
And that's what I really liked about how you said to have parents listen to kids. Because my parents are pretty good at listening, I won't lie, but I have friends.
Oh, good for you.
You know what, they could also, every parent could do better, I think. Every parent. I don't think any parent's perfect. And I've had numerous friends over the past years with terrible parents. And I think if they sat here and listened to this, it could change a lot of things. But also, a lot of parents have to have the want to listen to something like this.
Yes.
A lot of parents don't want to do stuff like that. And that's what pisses me off.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
probably they are not prepared themselves, like what you said, our parents don't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about it.
It's very uncomfortable for parents.
Yeah.
I get that, but if you think about...
Even be talking about this in the same room.
But,
It's sometimes uncomfortable.
but at the same time, we don't have to be here, A.
No.
B, you guys have already lived through this stuff. You should be comfortable with this stuff. You should want us to be comfortable with this stuff.
Well, we want you to, but like Allison said, a lot of times for us, it has to do with how we were raised and how our parents talked about it with us. And if the discussions that we had with our parents were either non-existent or super uncomfortable or just not adequate, then it doesn't give us good experience to go on, and it doesn't raise our comfort level.
Yeah,
That also doesn't help your comfort level with your kids either.
Well, no.
If you don't try and break that pattern.
And that's why.
If you remain in that pattern, your children's children, your children's children's children are all going to be this product of environment.
Well, that's why we're here.
Oh, sorry, you were going to say something?
That's exactly what you said, Amelia.
The circle goes round and round.
It's like you said, you start off with little touches, little things, and you build that relationship, and then in that relationship it gets stronger and stronger because you're blessed with your parents are listeners, like, that's what your friends have been. So, and I'm blessed with my kids because my oldest son, the relationship was very good, and he was 30, and we had to tell him he could not get married. And he respected us, he was mad at us for a while, but he respected us. So, it doesn't matter what age, and we all make mistakes, like you said, but the blessing is God loves us. And when you dwell on that, and you know that that's the central part of your family and church or faith, you can get through it all. Right?
Well, and even, for myself, raising two young adults that, they're making choices that I don't agree with, but I have to love them. I have to love them unconditionally, and to know that, as my husband said, this is their journey with the Lord. This is not your journey anymore. And as a parent, that's really hard. It is hard when you've had such and we still have an amazing relationship, and we had a great relationship growing up, but this is down their journey.
But they'll always, you planted the seed for them.
Yeah.
On their own
Because
side.
you built a relationship.
That's right. Yeah.
But it's also the cultural thing that we have.
Yeah.
What she said about parents talking. Also the cultural thing, and one thing, I'm lucky that my parents, although they come from Pakistan, because one thing they said, we are parents, but we are not angels. If we do mistake, do let us know.
Yeah.
But in some families, you cannot say anything to the parents, knowing that even if they are wrong. And that I'm sorry to say, it's with my wife's family, they couldn't. So when she saw me telling my dad he was wrong, she said, how do you speak to your dad? I said, oh, we tell it. And she said, are you serious? Like, it was shock to her in the first meeting when she met. And she said, how did you tell your dad that this is wrong? I said, but he is doing wrong. I told him he's doing wrong. She said, he can't say that. I said, okay, when you marry me, that will change. So we have to be open to our kids that we are not angels. If you see us wrong, tell us. And my kids will tell you, oh, Dad, you did this. I said, oh, thanks for telling me.
Yeah.
So that's another cultural thing that we have to break, that, parents are not angels. They are parents, but let them know
We're not
that
perfect.
they're not perfect.
Yes,
Exactly.
We're not perfect.
Parents are not always right. Some parents have to know that. They're not always 100% correct. And like you said, you have to listen to your kids' stuff to know that.
Yeah, that's right. We learn from you, that's for sure. Yeah, definitely. Excellent, okay.
Awesome.
Thank
Well,
you.
I think that's all for tonight, so thank you, Allison, on
Well,
behalf of
thank
all
you,
of
and I
us.
think you have a back again.
Thank you so much.